this story, I think, again, it's a story that's been very much about women, feminists, or TERFs, as we are called, trans-excluding radical feminists. But I think now this is really about parents and dads. So I'm going to bring you in on this, James. We'll be in just a couple of moments. But a new report study has come out, research from Brazilian scientists, that shows that transgender women, i.e. biological men, are stronger and have better heart and lung capacity than women, even 14 years after taking hormone therapy. And this new research is likely to include increased pressure for trans women to be excluded from female sports because they have, quite clearly, an unfair advantage. Well, let's talk about this with Fiona McInerney. She's head of sport at Fair Play for Women, who've been campaigning on this issue for quite some time. Good morning to you, Fiona.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I have to say, I looked at this study yesterday and thought, well, tell us something we don't know. It's really, really obvious. Everybody knows that once you've gone through male puberty, which only men can do, you're going to be stronger than women who have, by definition, not gone through male puberty. Does this study tell us anything new, or is it just important that it's just a new study at a crucial time for, well, protecting women's sport and fairness in sport?
Well, what's new about this study is the length of time that these people suppress their testosterone. So we have sport policies right now that say that if a male suppresses testosterone for 1 year or 2 years or maybe 3 years, that they can compete in women's sports. And we know that's not fair. What this study says is even after 14 years, you can take hormones for 14 years and that will change your body, but it will not change your sex. And the male performance advantage is still there. So all those sports that are saying after a period of time it can be fair for someone who's been through male puberty to be in women's sports have not a leg to stand on now. There is no evidence for that.
And this is why we have seen, haven't we, the sports body after sports body that we're happy to welcome biological men competing against women as trans women, most of whom, by the way, fully intact males, often, you know, 6 foot plus, competing against women much shorter, much smaller, much weaker than them, simply due to their biological realities. Those sports, actually, one by one, have been falling down on this and have been folding. And we know why they've been doing it, because it basically, you know, the ideology has met reality, as Helen Joyce's book rather wonderfully puts it. And actually, when audiences, spectators are watching these sports and seeing, you know, 6 foot plus males win women's swimming races and biological males competing against women in the weightlifting in the Olympics, frankly, most people, fair-minded people, think that's just not fair.
Yeah. And, you know, we talk to a lot of sports bodies, both national ones and international ones. Nobody thinks it's fair. It's hard to find anyone, really, who thinks it's fair. But they got into these policies with very little evidence on ideological grounds, exactly as you say, and they're being extremely cautious about coming back out of them. It's a real shame, because they really don't seem to have worried at all about upsetting women when they adopted these policies, but they're very cautious about upsetting trans people now. But as you say, it is a good time because we've seen a few changes. We've got good guidance from the sports councils that says it's not fair. We've seen British triathlon, we've seen England volleyball adopt new policies, and I am confident we're going to see more do the right thing.
It seems to me there's been a massive, massive change in this. We are seeing the sort of the rollback of the sort of the takeover, particularly of women's sport. And I think also when you have things like, you know, the women's European Championships, and people are getting more interested in women's sport and seeing the need for it to be fair, and the backlash from, I say, just fair-minded members of the public. Many women, sportswomen, were very, very wary of speaking out, afraid, and some, you know, we saw in the women's college swimming when Leah Thomas won one of those races. We saw them, they were basically being told, look, if you do speak out, you're going to lose not only your place in the swim team, you're also going to lose your scholarship as well.
Yeah, I mean, that hasn't gone away. You know, that's one of the reasons groups like ours keep talking, because we've talked to British Olympians who are still afraid to speak out, and they know it's not fair. And everyone at the training around the track says it's not fair. In some sports, it's a bit of a joke. I've talked to current athletes who say the guys in their team say, oh yeah, I could identify as a woman and I'd beat all of you. And it's just a big joke to them because it doesn't affect them, but they know it's not fair. Nobody thinks it's fair.
Yeah, and again, this isn't an issue in terms of trans men, i.e. biological women, competing against men, because, of course, they wouldn't stand a chance, they wouldn't get into those teams. But we're seeing lots of people said to me over the last couple of years, oh, look, this is such a minor issue. This is a handful of people. It's not, though, is it? We are seeing again and again. I think last year, was it, Kent's Woman Player of the Year was a 6-foot biological male. We've seen biological males, men, let's call them by the word we normally use in public life, in, women's changing rooms, fully exposed. This is making women feel very uncomfortable, but women are finally speaking out on it.
Yes, and you're right. People, I think a lot of sport bodies thought it was just a few unhappy males who needed to be accommodated. The problem, of course, is they didn't take account of the fact that it affects many, many women. So if you have just one trans person, as you say, a fully intact male, that affects many, many women. And you're also right, Julia, that the numbers of young males claiming to be female and wanting to be in female sport are also growing. So it's a compound problem. It affects a lot of women.
Yeah. And also, again, it's not just in sort of your Sunday morning football league or something playing on the local park. That's fine. These people can make their own rules up, but it is affecting professional sport where there is money. There is actual funding available, and as you say, one biological male, a trans woman, competing in a women's team, they can be on the podium. Well, that means the person who would have come first doesn't come first. Who would have come second doesn't come second. Someone else doesn't make it on the podium because they came third, therefore they've been bumped into fourth place. All the women who didn't make the team, it goes way back down the line, doesn't it? Do you think that we have reached a turning point?
Well, I think we have. I mean, you've just described something that really feels like sex discrimination, doesn't it? And people are starting to see it like that. And so I think we have, but I think we have a long way to go. A lot of people still think that we should accommodate the needs of trans people ahead of the needs of women. Why that should be? Well, that's how things have been for a long time. But we are making progress.
Yeah, but again, the key thing is where sports are separated, which is most of them, is separated by sex for a very good physical reason. So nothing is stopping any trans person from competing in sport in the sex in which they were born. No one is being excluded. It's just you can't compete unfairly against people of the opposite sex. It's not really very complicated, is it?
No, and that's why you end up with situations where you have a trans woman and a trans man both in the same event. Because the trans man, who's a female, knows that she needs to be in the women's competition in order to do well. So what's happened is that the women's competition has ended up being mixed sex. That's clearly unfair.
Yeah, and the men's not. Always good to talk to you. Fiona McInerney, she's head of sport at Fair Play for Women.